So good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to Digital Health, Leveraging Software to Improve Healthcare Outcomes. My name is William Bra. I am the director and founder of Venture Development Center, which is the University of Massachusetts flagship incubator in Boston. It's one of the first incubators of its kind, dedicated to life science and digital health. It was opened in 2009, and we had the distinct honor to support PillPack for about a year and a half, the team that developed Pharmacy OS, and as you well know, it was acquired but hasn't closed yet by Amazon for about $1 billion. Lots of opportunity. I'm going to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves, what they do, and what their expertise is in this field. Please.
Good morning, everyone. Brenda Irwin. I'm the founder and managing partner of the Relentless Venture Fund. We are a new fund that just launched this spring based in Vancouver, British Columbia. And our overarching mandate is we're interested in investments in active, healthy living, specifically preventative and proactive health. And I was practicing the proactive health by going to the wrong hotel and hustling to get here in time, so I apologize.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Debbie Lin. I'm from Boehringer Ingelheim Venture Fund. We are a global pharmaceutical company, privately owned, based in Germany, but also we have headquarters here in the US. I run and head up the Digital Healthcare Venture Fund for our fund. We are combined life science and digital health. And so that's what we're working on. We started the digital healthcare component January of this year, so we're rather early. But really trying to understand the space, and that's about us.
Ed Michael, I'm the founder and managing partner of Lionbird Ventures, which is based in Chicago and Tel Aviv. I started the firm about 6.5 years ago after a 27-year career at Abbott. And we focus on two areas, digital health and software tools for small and medium-sized businesses.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Taha Janda. I'm a partner at HealthX Ventures, which is a digital health early-stage fund based out of Madison, Wisconsin. For those of you who don't know, Madison's kind of important just in the digital health space because of Epic. So we do have very close ties to Epic and also with other EMR vendors like Cerner and Allscripts and Athena Health. We focus really on software products that are helping providers in pharma and vendors. We try to focus as much as we can and specifically think through how the EMR can provide value insights all across the board.
Thank you very much. So lots of buzz and hype around this topic. Reports of funding on a trajectory to eclipse last year, which would make it a record-breaking year. The panelists had a lively pre-conference phone call, and we sort of decided that we would start with this by talking about what digital health software really is. And you'll appreciate that when we get rolling. I couldn't define it. Who would like to take a stab at it? So what does it mean to you? And then I'm going to ask a follow-up question to y'all about what types of companies are on your radar screen, just to give the audience a sense of what we're talking about and what we're not talking about.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
So I'm going to kind of step back and say there has to be a lot of level setting when we think about it, right? I think otherwise we get very broad, not level setting around the question, but more so around what is digital health. Even when you look at funding, you've seen companies like HeartFlow or Grail or Peloton, and it goes all across the board, modernizing medicine. Those are probably the 10 that received the largest amount of funding either this year or last year. And it ranges around. What we as a firm have done is said, what are certain filters that we can have to define those parameters. I also come from a health system background. So for me, always I felt, and I truly believe that the quadruple aim is a filter that does just that. One, is there a certain type of technology that can, one, reduce the cost of care, increase the efficiency of care, increase the access to care, and improve the experience for the provider and the patient. If you fit those parameters to me and provide a value to any form, to a patient, to a health system, to a pharmaceutical company, to a payer, anyone around healthcare, then that to me fits in as digital health. So that's kind of where I am. Unless we can get real dirty if you want to go down like regulatory stuff.
Well, let's just get a scan of what we think about.
Yeah, I mean, we look at it very broadly, of course, and if you look at the portfolio of companies that we've invested in, it ranges from a company based here in Boston that's a consumer-facing pregnancy and fertility company to a company in DC, as an example, that is using RFID and software to monitor drug usage in the hospital. So, you know, it's tools, it's anything, any software-related thing, in our view, that can be used, as Taz said, to both, we hope both, reduce costs and improve care.
I would say when we started our strategy early this year, we really looked at what digital healthcare means to us as a pharmaceutical company. And for those of you who are pharma people, I know that there's been this conversation, at least within our organization, of what is the pharma company going to be in the future? Is it going to be a pharma company as we know it today? Or is it going to be a healthcare solutions company? Or is it just going to be a manufacturer of pills? There's this kind of bouncing back, and then there's grassroots efforts coming from the bottom. And so there's a lot of that discourse. And so when we set out our strategy, we thought, okay, well, what does this mean to us? So there's 3 pillars to that. It's setting up our current business. So how can digital healthcare set us up for our current business? How could it help us plan for the new businesses coming off our pipeline? And then how can it prepare us for the future in terms of new business models? So those are the 3 sort of pillar areas of why we're doing this. And then we started looking at what does digital healthcare mean to the rest of the world? How do we cut up that space? And so we defined it into kind of different bucket areas. One is digital R&D, that's research and discovery, molecular optimization, in silico drug discovery, all of that. So that's digital R&D, which we decided as a venture fund not to play in. We also have digitalization of medicine. So how to replace the doctor? There's a lot of that going on with digital software, whatever. Digitization of the intervention, the pill or whatever that is. And then digitization of the consumer health space. So it could be like, how do we do marketplace reach out? How do we do commercialization, that kind of thing. We decided that we're not interested in sort of digitalization of healthcare delivery, but we're interested in medication adherence, we're interested in digital therapies, we're interested in digital companion, things that are aligned very closely with our therapeutic areas, but also closely with our business interests. So that's how we take a look at it.
Well, we're quite diverse here as a panel. So my background before starting the Relentless Venture Fund was I used to be a healthcare, or what I describe as traditional healthcare VC in drug development and devices. I wanted to be in the space that was outside of the long tail of drug development, both from a capital and a time and a risk perspective. So when I mention we're in preventative and proactive, when I look at what digital health means for us and the role of software, I actually pull from the FDA's outline around the impact of using most recently their pre-certification program for software as a medical device. That's really at the heart of a lot of what we're looking at. I'm not interested in tools, clinical tools. I am a B2B, primarily investor, but I want to see a direct impact on the consumer. So I see digital health and investing in digital health as enabling the patient and the consumer, both preventatively and proactively. And proactively, I define as you may have a chronic disease, but I want to be involved in companies that help you live a better life with it, even if it's not a direct drug. So the umbrella of our fund is active, healthy living. So I can speak to some examples of that later, but I see digital health as enabling the consumer and enabling the patient. That's our focus versus the clinical or the clinician's role.
Thank you. As you can tell, it is broad and diverse, and I think it's safe to say that we're in the early innings of this field. Nevertheless, we all have a sense of where the opportunities are, and one really interesting way for you all to understand what we're looking for is to give examples of the types of companies that you have invested in, or if you can talk about that, or the types that are on your radar screen at a very specific level.
Yeah.
And I'll push back if it's not specific enough. But if you're betraying confidentiality, we will understand.
Yeah. No. So the last panel before us,
Yep.
someone asked the question around EMR integration and kind
Yep.
of the pain around that. So our first investment as a firm was actually Redox. For those of you who know, Redox is essentially a cloud-based integration platform that has taken the 6 to 9 months integration process for health systems and done it relatively turnkey, where it's 4 to 6 weeks in the first implementation, and then afterwards they can, essentially they map all HL7 feeds to JSON, and they're able to just turn on. So they've been able to develop an application ecosystem of over 1,000 applications that have mapped out to their APIs. And they're also scaled across 200 health systems. So we use them as really a means of, there was a large problem within health systems, or really across the board, of how do you use that data, and we invest in Redox. We're also looking at, voice as kind of the next era, and then patient engagement as well. So.
That's very intriguing. We'll pick up on that later. Let me switch around a little bit and ask Brenda to share some examples, since I think you have some at top of mind right now.
I do. I actually, well, as a new fund, we've only made one investment so far, but it's a good one to share. So Canary Medical, founded in Vancouver, and it has quite a few pillars to it, but the opening is a development of a embedded sensor into a variety of products. The first one that's been announced publicly in the press release is a total knee replacement. They'll go to hip, shoulder. They have cardiac applications. So you think of this as if anybody in the room has a total knee replacement, if you were going in for surgery, you can actually have the standard of care or the smart standard of care, and smart being digitized. So you walk in your room, the visual is you walk in your room, Alexa, whoever, how's my knee? So there's the chronic management of the product and the software and the data management around that, but there's also the acute phase. So there's an active ability right now with the early development of working with a clinician in rehab in the first 90 days as well. So it's quite exciting in terms of the potential from a data perspective, and it's also this company had a partnership before even we did the Series A, which was quite significant and off the radar for most, a joint venture, a data management company out of Australia. So they're big ecosystem focused already. That is a proactive health company, so you have a situation that you need to manage for the rest of your life. And you're going to be more mobile and active philosophically, we think, with more information enabling that. And if I can speak to one, I won't name the company, but another very specific company around diabetes. There's all kinds of glucose monitoring and management products out there. We're actually focused on one that has medical grade data around the prevention and also the management of diabetic foot ulcers. And for us, the software around that, the sensor technology around that, it's underserved, quite frankly, in my opinion. But for us, it hits the box of not only managing the direct disease, but all the potential other impacts with seniors and aging, so more mobile, getting out more, actually will have a direct impact on mental health. Like, we see that as part of the, you're starting with the, do you want to get out and walking about, or do you want to, and how are we going to enable somebody to be active in their life?
Thank you. So far, big systems, big diseases. Debbie or Ed,
Sure.
would you like to share?
We made 2 investments so far, one in a company called Raynomics. It's a UK-based company that uses artificial intelligence and imaging to discern between ischemic and hemorrhagic stroke. And so that falls very closely within our interest in cardiovascular. The other company is a medication adherence-based company in New York called Wealth. It's got a very clever way of using behavioral economics to nudge people into being medication compliant or focusing on medication. So instead of rewarding someone with a positive incentive, like I'll give you $100 if you take your medicines, they're taking away money. And they found that by taking away, you're actually more incentivized when you're going to lose something than when you're going to gain something that you never owned. So that's quite clever. And we're looking for platform technologies, those that can be utilized in different therapeutic areas where there's a very, very nice use case, maybe in one, that could also be leveraged into others. As I mentioned, our areas are medication adherence, digital therapeutics, standalone from drug, with drug is a third one, and then this area of diagnosis, monitoring, population health, kind of what we call patient care monitoring or patient care management.
Yeah, very good. Ed?
Yeah, please go to our website, www.lionbird.com, to look at the portfolio. We've made about 25 investments so far. About half of those are in digital health, and you can see it's quite a range of different types of things. The areas we're looking at right now, though, I mean, I should say, we're always looking for great founders and great ideas. So what I'm about to say, I don't want to say is a limiting factor at all. But there are 4 areas in particular we've been doing a lot of research on and looking at issues, solutions, and those are behavioral health, billings and collection and payments, post-discharge care, so kind of a similar thing, Debbie, I think, to what you were speaking about, and then patient privacy and regulatory compliance. So those are the 4 main areas that we're looking at right now.
Any questions about what this field is and what we're looking for? We have time for a couple. And please, Srinath.
Hi, my name is Srinath. I'm the founder of RiskCall. We help hospitals to improve nursing workflow using smartwatches, so happy and efficient nurses can do a better job at the bedside. I was trying to understand, when you guys are investing in the health IT companies like ours, what metrics specifically do you look in an early stage startup like us? Is it the number of paid pilots, revenue generating company, or data, or case studies, white papers? What are the specific metrics you guys are looking for a health IT startups?
What a wonderful question, because it exactly introduces our next segment. Thank you very much.
Why don't I take a shot at that?
Yeah.
Again, I would tell you, first of all, to us, it's all about great founders and great ideas, real solutions to real problems. So what I'm about to say is not meant to be limiting in any way, because it varies. But what we look for are usually companies that have raised maybe about $1 million, $1.5 million so far, have been working at it for 12 to 18 months, have something more than just a good idea, and therefore probably have had 2 or 3 pilots, not necessarily paid pilots, so we don't limit ourselves to revenue generating companies by any means. That's a good thing. I mean, if you've got that, that's great. But it's really, to us, what we're more interested in is validating the size of the served market, okay? It's not the 3rd page you see in every deck, which is market huge, okay? It is, what is the market you're actually serving? And show us, validate for us, or help us validate, that your solution is really going to be something that served market is going to want to buy within our lifetimes. So it is, what can you generate in terms of revenue, let's say within 3 to 4 years, okay?
I would say, echoing everything that Ed said, all of the above, plus we really look for also that the company really knows the science. And it's kind of funny to be saying this because the company is developed based on the science, but whoever is talking to us needs to know the science and understand the actual, how the outcomes are generated, the actual, if it's a sensor, how does the sensor really work? I cannot imagine, or I cannot tell you how many people I've asked exactly how does it work and what are you measuring, and people cannot explain it to me. So understanding the science, almost from a sort of very scientific perspective, we look at it, even though these are digital healthcare companies, we kind of use the lens of pharma company for a clinical trial. So we think about, okay, how are you better than the standard of care? How have you shown that? What is it that you're picking up? What's the measurement? All of that. So we do a deep dive plus all the things that Ed said.
You're beginning to see how we're all interested in digital health, but each of us, you have to approach very differently. One puts themselves in your shoes and imagines the kind of questions she gets when she gets back to her company, and the number of scientists chipping away at just about anything that you propose. So you got to help her through that process. Brenda?
I think the only thing that I would add, specifically on the areas that we're looking at, that I spent quite a bit of time doing angel investing before we started the venture fund. I've identified the fact that I have less tolerance for, although I am a seed and Series A investor, I have a lower tolerance for inexperienced teams at seed. And the ideas, so going beyond the ideas, and I'm just being blunt about it. It's you can be as smart as you want to be, but I've been doing this a long time, so I don't want you to learn how to figure out how to run a business on my investment. So I really want to see some quality experience, even if it's a high-touch part-time advisor. And I will tell you, even for my own case, we're a small team, I don't want to learn everything about AI, but I know it's critical to the businesses I'm working in. So I have a venture partner who is a specialist in AI, and a venture partner by definition is not full-time. I'd say use the same model. So I really just want to put that one out there, that I tend to scan and punt when I see there's no real depth of experience to the early stage teams.
And that's because you have a lot of choices.
Yeah, that's right.
You don't have to bother with things
right.
that aren't quite cooked yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for us, my managing partner is also a former serial entrepreneur. Took 3 companies as far as he could and sold them. The last one was Nordic Consulting. And I feel like our mantra is definitely around the team. Part of our investment thesis is even part of a good section of it is around what are missing pieces of your team. And before we invest, for example, there's a company that we just did a first close on. I spent probably a week on site with them outside of traditional events that we do, just to see how approachable is the executive team, how fast can you iterate, going down that entire path. And then I'll say is, generally we look at companies that have a minimum of $500,000 ARR. If you have 1 or 2 pilots at awesome systems like a Cleveland Clinic or others, and they have a clear ROI there, what we've done is also we'll make an ROI model with you. If it's a company that we really want to work towards, we tend to be very operational with our companies, but at the same time, the goal is you have to show a clear ROI to your customer. And if you're early, our goal is also to take you to around 200K MRR, and then introduce you to other downstream pieces as well.
Let me ask you all, just to further define this, what's too early and what's too late? Knowing that's going to be different, but...
So too early, I think that's changing as we started off earlier talking about the funding landscape. The time for seed to Series A is drastically decreased. I think even when we've made seed stage investments, we've definitely shied away from, instead of saying, we'll raise around in 18 months, it's definitely been, where's our Series A in the next year? So I think that as funding velocity increases, that's bound to happen. And that's why I think you're even seeing later stage investors come and invest in the Series A or seed side. For us, too early is sub $500,000 revenue, but if it's an awesome company, we're always open. Too late for us, I think, is, I think we're also as a fund seeing a shift in the way we were. We were definitely more of the gap between seed and Series A or true Series A, and now we're shifting more towards a Series A and Series B model. So I think, but at the same time, I think too late is also going crazy. Like yesterday, there was a company that, you know, raised, I think, a $32 million Series A round, you know, and we've seen others that have raised crazy seed rounds as well. So I try to keep that more towards valuations. So if your valuation of your company and you're coming to engage with us is, you know, above 25, then we'll just say it doesn't make sense for us right now.
Because the math doesn't work.
Exactly.
Yeah. Does everyone understand that when I said the math doesn't work? It's really important to, when talking to these great people, to understand the calculus that they're doing in their head as they talk to you. We can get into that a little bit, but, well, actually, let's get into that. As it pertains to what's too early and what's too late. I mean, take a stab at what's too early, what's too late in terms of math.
Well, I'll bang the Canadian drum right now and say it's more of a philosophical answer from me around too early, because if I see a new investment, a seed stage investment, and they have not tapped into the large number of grant programs within Canada in research programs, it's so easy to have efficient use of capital and non-equity based financing early in Canada if you have any research element to your business. So I don't want to talk to people who are so lazy that they don't do the work to figure out where all the programs are, because there are a lot of them and you can see it pretty quickly. I mean, it's very sexy to get the venture deal. It's like, I have more respect if you wait. So that's my answer to the too early. The too late, because we're a relatively small fund, and our check sizes, to your point, Bill, around, I'm always doing the math around how many follow-on rounds as well, how many of those would I be able to participate in, always doing the quick calculations in my head. That's one thing. The other thing is, because of the size of our fund and the unique nature of our fund, I want to see where our team can contribute to value creation from our original investment to the time of exit. And it's rather unique in that way. I co-founded our original partnership with an Olympic athlete who has just a very unique international network. My venture partner is head of product development for new AI applications at Nike. Like, we have very unique opportunities, but there needs to be something other than a co-branding. I want to see how we directly contribute, because that's what's exciting for me in the business, next to the returns.
Yeah, my answer is kind of along those lines, strategic in nature rather than numbers in nature. I think that too early would be an idea and a prototype where there is no focused market defined. So a lot of times people come to me and they say, well, we have this really nice sensor or this new technology, let's see where it fits into the Boehringer Ingelheim therapeutic area, where it could fit. So it's like, I have the hammer, but you know, let's find a nail for it. So that's too early, and if it's just an idea, definitely not. Too late would be if you're also just looking for scaling. So, you know, BI, come help us scale our company. We want to go to China and India and everywhere else. So we really approached the company saying that we want to learn with them. So we would want to invest and learn together, understand what are the questions that are the biggest challenges, what's the FDA asking, how can we help, how can we utilize our knowledge, but also we want to learn from you as the company. So that's...
Yeah, and just relating to the math, I think, Bill, you know, for us, it's very important to think about this in terms of, are you raising enough money and do you have the team and capabilities that you're going to achieve milestones before you run out of money and get to the next round, so that we don't get diluted to hell. If you do have the money, or raise the money, and have the team and capabilities to achieve some significant milestones before the next round, then there's a good chance the valuation of the company is going to rise, and we and the founders will be in good shape. If that doesn't happen, then everybody's going to be unhappy. So the math is very important.
You know, one of the really interesting things about the RESI conference, which I've had the pleasure to be involved in since the beginning as an advisory board member, is the way it surfaces amazing investors that, from all over the world that are looking at life science and healthcare. But short of coming to Resi, which the founder of Resi would like us to do religiously, come to every city, and how do we get in touch with you? How do we find you? How do you start a dialogue with you?
Yeah, I think,
I mean, it's not like there's a list of.
so
Help us
actually,
out.
for the entrepreneurs in the room, you guys are looking for like a Dream It, which is an accelerator based in Baltimore, or in Philadelphia, and now also in Tampa, has an exhaustive list of healthcare IT investors. Just don't see I mentioned to go after or anything, but also, we use a lot of accelerators as means for deal flow. So Startup Bootcamp that's here, we've invested in a couple of their companies, and there's, we've also co-invested with about 40. So our annual LP meeting was last week. So, I was going back through and looking at stuff, and I realized that, for our 12 investments, we've co-invested with over 50 other VCs across the country.
Oh, that's really interesting.
So I think networks definitely play a role. I'll definitely, if it's coming through an introduction, that's even better. But I think conferences are a great way, LinkedIn's a great way, but also be upfront what you're looking for. I think a lot of us get, the 3 to 4 emails a day from companies saying, hey, can we just talk, and it's not really action oriented. I think make your ask up front. Everyone's different. If someone makes an ask of me up front, I'm much more likely to have a conversation with them.
Can you be more? Can you give an example of an ask?
So it's, for example, one of the companies we found
Yeah.
came to us and said, we're trying to understand how to work with these 3 health systems. We noticed that you've had interactions with them.
That's that's perfect.
What's kind of the way around it?
Wow.
Or it's even, we're looking to raise 6 months from now. What are metrics that we need to hit for you to kind of keep us in the loop or put us on your list to look at?
But you've already determined in looking at that question that they could be a fit.
Exactly. Yeah. So anytime an entrepreneur emails us, definitely it's always like a quick LinkedIn search or look what their company is.
So you wouldn't pitch a consumer-oriented company to you.
We do have one.
You never know. Just be specific about what you're
I
asking.
steer clear generally around them. We're much more in depth around enterprise companies or platform-based companies. So we've done it across the spectrum, where we have a patient experience company that aggregates social media data and builds it into HCAP scores. That's their co-investment. And then we have it.
Yeah.
Then we even have like a billings one, and then we have a patient education one, and a mobile clinical trials one as well.
Is it safe to say that you would appear on that list?
I am on that list, yeah.
Okay, all right. So that's one way, a good list.
I mean, I think it is important to, to tell all the founders to do your homework. When you put that contact list together of VCs you want to get in touch with, there are ways to match what you're doing with VCs. And when you're doing that, by the way, one thing I would recommend, it's very simple, look at the VC website, okay? Make sure that what you see on the website really is a match with what you're asking for in terms of investment themes, amount, stage, all those sorts of things. Don't just contact somebody because they appeared on the list. Do a little homework to make sure it's really a good fit. And I think if you do that, you'll have better success.
Let me add a little bit, or question a little bit that, in my experience, you find, in your network, you find out what people have invested in, but that won't appear on their website for maybe 6 months. Maybe that's just in the blockchain, but the point is that other people might know. For example, there might be CEOs of companies you've invested in that are closer to you and might help validate whether it's worth the time to talk to Ed or not.
If you know somebody that we know, whether that's another founder or somebody at another VC firm,
Yeah.
or somebody at another company that we've worked with, then by all means, get that person to do an intro, make a recommendation, whatever. That's always the
Yeah.
best way. I would just tell you, and this is not to, this is not to discourage anybody, but of the 25, 26 investments that we've made, we probably looked at 1,000, 1,200 companies to get there. Of the 25 or 26 that we invested in, I believe 80% came from personal introductions from people that we know.
And I think some of the personal introductions are based on the homework that you've done. They're not doing you a favor. They are actually saying, yes, I think Ed would be interested in something like this. And moreover, it's complementary to what I'm doing. I'm happy to make the introduction. Okay.
I have nothing to add. That was all covered by Taha and Ed. Accelerators, definitely, or
How do we find you?
website, LinkedIn,
Well,
conferences.
what do we even, I mean, we'll have to check to see if you're on the Dream It list.
Oh, yeah, we definitely, not Dream It, but Rock Health,
Ah.
Plug and Play are the two accelerators we work very closely because they're also on the West Coast. and
That's
can't
interesting.
Be everywhere.
Also, if you know somebody that subscribes to PitchBook or a similar thing, you can do searches on that to do matching, themes, investments, that sort of thing, and they could probably help you get a list together pretty quick.
Okay.
I would also say there's a lot of money out there, right? So you're not necessarily, don't just go out there and look for a checkbook. Really go out there and look for a partner, especially this early age. I think all of us have to, outside of board meetings, we all tend to roll up our sleeves and have to work with you. So really look for that relationship that's there. Because look, the reality is there's a lot of money out there and you can go get it. But also it's part of the entrepreneur side as well as feel comfortable. If you feel comfortable with that VC, then that's 100 times. I guarantee, I've been on the other side and I guarantee you it's much easier to work with someone who there's a sense of rapport and trust with versus just someone who you have to just get a check from.
Brenda, how do we find you?
Well, I want to share that a negative bias right now. Please don't reach out through an intermediary or an investment bank. I want to have a direct, as we all do, we want some kind of direct connection. And that's just, again, from years of experience of it takes a lot of work to figure out how to find the right person to make the right introduction to you. But I would be also remiss if I didn't mention, because of what I see in the room, is there is a couple of very large lists for women who invest in women-founded businesses. And I've just recently had a conversation with a gentleman in Canada with a business where he just hadn't been in the tech sector for long enough to realize that two of the other founders who were women open up a massive number of new opportunities. I am a woman in tech. I invest in great entrepreneurs who happen to be men and women, but I will share with you that from a strategic perspective, if you have a woman who is a founder, and not just digging through the C-suite of how can we make this work, it opens up a huge number of opportunities. And in terms of having a conversation with me, I can make connections to other groups that are specifically only funds investing in women-founded businesses.
Questions about finding the right investors that are also partners. Srinath, you've used those lists. Srinath happens to be a company in our incubator. And I think you went through Dream It, right?
Yeah. I'm a Dream It. I think I'm in the same cohort cycle as Married to DX.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
So are those lists any good?
They're really good, and
Why?
the only thing I did not do is going through the introductions. I directly try to reach out to the people, and I quickly talk about and then what's my ask. But it's very interesting when you mention that first go through the partners approach to see how the investors help beyond writing the check size. So that would make more comfortable is what I hear right now.
I'm sorry.
I just want to add, I was just educating, training, coaching my own analysts around some strategies that I'll share with the entrepreneurs as well. Is when you're looking at our LinkedIn profiles, and not just our websites, but look at our history and the companies we've invested in before, like in our former life, and then find those press releases, who are the companies that they co-invested with. Because in my current fund, I'm not bragging about all the co-investors and the corporate venture VCs that I used to co-invest with, but I have a lot of experience there. So you have to do some work there. It's, I think, another untapped strategy that entrepreneurs overlook. And again, it takes time and work, and get somebody who is working with you to spend that time, aka an analyst. It's not that hard to figure out who did what when, even 10, 15 years ago.
Questions about how to start a dialogue with these folks? I'm going to pass on you for a minute.
I have a
Please.
question, maybe going back to the financial
Okay.
metrics. You know, we have a very specific amount that we're out raising now. By the way, we're at UMass Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship down in Fall River.
Oh,
I don't know if you have any
congratulations.
connection with them, but.
I'm sure one of these folks would be glad to write you a check. Just kidding.
Thank you very much. We have a, by the way, just a quick, I get my 2 seconds of advertising. We have a expert system to help clinicians diagnose and treat their patients with mental and behavioral
Great.
conditions. My question has to do with a specific amount raised with all the financial stuff worked out. How do you go about determining the valuation, and maybe this is later on you want to do this,
No, it's
the
okay.
valuation of the company, and sort of how much, you know, we could say, gee, we want X, but if we're going to give away, you know, 50% of the company, we don't want to do that. So, but, you know, we have a certain amount of working capital and projections, et cetera, but we have in mind that we don't want to dilute ourselves completely out of, you know, owning the company. And I imagine you all don't want to own the company 100%. So could we have a little dialogue about that?
That comes up real fast once you've made the connection with these folks, and it's part of the calculus. And I think Brenda has an insight she'd like to share.
Yeah, I hesitate because I know we're being taped here, but one of the rules of thumb, really early stage, was like 60-40. The first syndicate will want 60% of the company and 40. I mean, you may say that's not fair, I don't get it, but in the absence of revenue, you either go to market precedent and it's too early to show exits and say, well, this company exited for this. You have to do all the math. So the number one tip I would like to leave you with, aside from just sharing that one, is when you go into a conversation, the first conversation with a potential investor, I beg you to not use phrasing around you want to avoid dilution. You're looking for the partner for the long term, and Taha mentioned it earlier, it's a relationship, it's a long-term relationship. A term sheet, in my opinion, is a prenup. Think about it that way. And I do. So if I hear very early in a first conversation with the entrepreneur, it's like, we can't be diluted, I can't lose control, I'm out, right? Like, it's just, it tells me something about the mindset of the team versus why are you looking for investment? Because I'd like to think I'm bringing more of the money to the table.
Yeah, that entrepreneur probably should apply for grants. They're thinking too small, and that talking about dilution is a signal right off the bat that this might not be the team to pivot into a larger market.
Yeah, I think,
other responses?
I think, Bill, the market size is very important. You know, pre-revenue, I think for us, this is why it's so important for us to validate the market, the served market, and the revenue potential of the company, because when you get to Series A, Series B, and so forth, you know, then the valuations really are based on ARR or other revenue metrics. And, you know, at the seed stage, if you're very minimal revenues or no revenues, we have to try to come up with a number. That's based on a number of things, market size and our, you know, realistic projection of what your future revenues are going to be. But I would also say, you know, there is a market element to this. We do a lot of research on what other deals look like, you know, what early stage seed type evaluations have been in that particular market. So we have a sense for, you know, what the market will bear and what what kind of competition there will be. And if we're in competition with other VCs, that would be a good thing for you, okay?
Other questions in the back, please? Thank you.
Hey, thanks. Thanks, you guys, for sharing this information.
Why don't you stand up so we can-
Sure, I'm Charlie O'Connell.
Great, thank you.
Fundraising CEO.
Yeah.
Just, digital health is such an exciting space right now with lots of unknowns. Would love to get your guys just kind of feedback on what are the key performance indicators, the kind of metrics that you, in your minds, as investors, are looking at in this burgeoning kind of technology-fueled space where, there's this kind of dream that everybody has of a global impact, but then, reality setting in of like, all right, well, we're not boiling the ocean. And I just appreciate some feedback, investor perspective. What are those kind of, indicators that you are looking at right now, specifically related to digital health opportunities? And I appreciate you guys having this conference.
You're welcome, and that's also an excellent question because it is our last question.
I think
What's the future?
The future. I think that everybody's learning together in this
Yeah.
area. There is just a new alliance that's forming called Digital Therapy Alliance, I believe. It's been formed with a lot of the leading therapeutic companies or digital therapeutic companies like Pear and Click and others, including Ford. And they formed an alliance in order to discuss the ontology. How do we even talk about digital health? How do we define it? What do we measure? What is a meaningful measure and to whom? So this sort of, I would say there's definition, clarification on definition, clarification on value to whom. Is it payers, to patients, to pharma, who cares? And then adoption, because in healthcare, adoption and sort of implementation is a long cycle. And I think the companies that are willing to put in the money and also have the motivation to stay in it for a very long kind of cycle and then sort of that adoption, because here in the United States, you have to sell payer to payer if you have a company, right? A technology. It's not like you can just disperse the technology just like one time and it's all done. So I think that it's unclear currently exactly what we mean by what we say when we say digital health, because we might ask someone and it has a different definition. However, we're getting clearer, and I think that's why the funding has started to shift from more C to more Series A and B because of the FDA, the regulations, and all of that. So I'm not answering your answer directly, but I think that we're getting to a sort of a better understanding of what is valuable, what are the meaningful outcome measures, and even with this whole explosion in artificial intelligence, machine learning, what do we do with data? Everybody seems to have a company that knows that data is important, but they don't know exactly what that means and what measures they want to extract from the data. And if you think about an outcome measure, for example, like a 6-meter walk test for Parkinson's, if you have a lot of data, that 6-meter walk, we don't need to do the 6-meter walk test because you can know everything about the trajectory of the patient. So that's redefining the medical outcome measure, and therefore the medical community, the American Medical Association, needs to get on board there if that really is of relevance. And it took, I think something like generations in order for the medical community to accept the stethoscope. So I don't know how long it's going to take them to understand this, but I think there's sort of people are catching up and people are starting to understand what this all means. So.
Other perspectives?
I would just say, to the extent you can quantify as many things as possible around what the ROI for the customer is going to be, this will help you. And I mean real hard quantification. We talked at the beginning about two things. We want digital health to both reduce costs and improve outcomes. The cost piece of that is usually the easier part to quantify. The outcomes, especially if they're longer term outcomes, you may have a hard time doing that in the near term. So whatever you can do though, both to say these are short-term savings, medium-term savings, long-term savings, and then show the ROI based on what the customer is going to have to pay for your product, I think this will help you and avoid a lot of the pie-in-the-sky stuff that we hear from a lot of digital health companies today.
I want to add a general comment versus a specific comment that I think might help us even close to a wrap-up, is going back to, it's evolving for us as well. And I do go to the FDA and go, if you have not reviewed in detail even their pre-certification program, how they piloted, it's a fantastic case study. If you look at the first companies they picked, the range was Fitbit, J&J, like Google Life Sciences, Pear Therapeutics. Look at this is about approving a business versus individual products and solutions. That is in my opinion, game changing, and it's what's elevating and buoying my interest moving forward. And you'll see what's sticking and what's not, even from a regulatory perspective.
We have time for 10 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, if you're that early, I think everything that was said is very, very critical and true. The only thing I would add is if you're that early, sell the dream. Like, sell the freaking dream like no other as well. Because the reality is you don't have a lot of things to quantify. You'll have 1 or 2 contracts, if not maybe 3 or 4 max if you're at that stage. So sell the dream of what you would do with the money. I think a lot of companies miss the point of I'm gonna take $3 or $4 million from you, but they won't really tell me what they're gonna do with it. You know, I think all of us, when we write that check, our mindset is there's gonna be another funding round in the next 12 to 18 months. Even though your runway could be 24 months, tell me what you're gonna do in that time frame. And also keep in mind that healthcare is 2 to 3 generations behind other industries. I always reference, you know, the fintech industry, especially now that we're on the East Coast, is we're in the mint.com era. We're in the aggregation of data phase. We're not yet into the wallets or the digits phase of where, you know, you're able to look at records and say, what can you do with them? We're definitely getting there, you know, so I think you should definitely sell the dream, but also know what you're selling and know what you'll do with the money. So
We will all be here for the next 5 minutes informally, so I encourage you to check in with us. And I would like to thank everyone. It was a great conversation. The other thing I would like to add is that you should look at exits that the investors have had. There haven't been that many of them yet, if you're really interested to know where the market is headed.